This next speaker, really dear to my heart. I've known this person 20 plus years, had an opportunity to serve alongside of him. I've seen him build, I've seen him start, I've seen him plant different things throughout the years, a true entrepreneur at heart. And so I am excited to welcome to the stage David Roberts. He's gonna talk to you about some great things today. Why don't you clap your hands for David Roberts?
All right, thank you very much. All right. Well, I want to first say that I am honored to be here this afternoon and have the opportunity to be able to share before some great people and great business owners and aspiring business owners and so forth. So I'll take a moment in just a minute to kind of introduce myself and my background and hopefully create a desire to want to hear what I got to say. And hopefully I can add to what you already have going on and so forth. But before anything else, I'm a man of God, so what I want to do is I want to pray and invite the Holy Spirit to be a part of everything that is going on and move from that particular place. Father, first of all, we want to thank you and give you all the praise and all the glory and all the honor. We thank you that without you, we can do absolutely nothing, but by you, we can do all things. So we ask you to help and intervene within this particular time, my particular session here. Help me on the sending end, help them on the receiving end, and we meet all in the middle and give you all the praise and all the glory for doing a wonderful thing, because it's our desire to glorify you by helping your people. And we all agree by saying amen and amen. All right. Well, first of all, I've been a senior pastor for almost 27 years. I might not look like it, so forth, but I've been full-time pastoring for a long time now. And I started in my 20s and so forth. And in the process, when I started pastoring, I didn't start as a legacy. You know, my family wasn't pastors. No one in my family came from a ministry kind of background. So when I got, quote unquote, dropped off at the corner at the age 28, and had to learn how to pastor. And the congregation at that time might have been 40 people on a good day. And, and they were all older than me and so forth. So I had to learn on the fly a lot of things that are leadership based that came over time, of learning how to lead people older than you, how to lead people that are a different skin color than you, how to lead people that maybe have a different background, whether it's white collar or blue collar, whatever the situation might be, learning how to lead that, how to lead leaders, so on and so forth. These are things that we learned over time. So we started with about 40 people, and over time we grew it to about 1,000 people. And we were able to start a church in Fort Wayne. We started another church in Dayton, Ohio, so forth. We were able to build a couple 30,000 square foot facilities. We built one right in the midst of the great, what they were calling the big recession, and where everybody was going away from building. And we built it right in the midst of that because we made a decision that we weren't participating within the recession that was going on, because there was no slowing down of God's economy, so on and so forth. So, we've been able to do things. We started a K through 8 community school. We were in the process of just doing what we do and staying in our lane. And, the Lord impressed upon us to start a school. And even though we didn't have nobody on my team, my ministry team, none of us came from an education leadership, background, so forth. But we threw our name in the hat and started a K through 8 community school from scratch, so forth. And when we started, we were terrible, so forth. But we had to figure it out, because we were in it not to make money. We were in it to help kids and present parents choices, some good, solid choices. And in the course of a couple of years of getting around people that were doing it on a higher level, so forth, we found some things that we were doing wrong and some things that we could implement. And once we did that, the school went from a handful of kids to over 300 kids, so forth. And our test scores, which was the big deal, our test scores went from, the bottom of the barrel, so forth, to the top of the upper echelon, with now the state of Ohio, where we're based out of. The state of Ohio was calling the education department was calling upon us to do workshops, calling upon us, to share, like, what are you doing particularly with the kind of demographic that we had, so forth, that a lot of kids were in situations that looked like they weren't supposed to succeed, and they were succeeding, so forth. So it got people's attention. So there's a number of different things, we started a catering company, so forth, just because we had a daycare and we had the school and we had to feed these kids. So instead of, outsourcing it and making somebody else rich, we had a kitchen and we had some folks that could straight cook, so forth. So we started our own catering company so that we could legally above board do it. And so forth. And turns out that, within a few years, we had the largest catering company, in Lima, Ohio, so forth. Just from the amount of kids that we were feeding on a daily basis, so forth. We started a title holding company. A title holding company enabled us to be able to buy up property, buy up houses, fix them up and make affordable housing to our community. So forth. So there's a number of different things. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of my background. I'm not trying to brag or come off anything like that. I'm just trying to share some things just to give a little perspective, because I'm about to break it down in a minute, okay, so forth. But that's kind of some of the things that we've done, and that was over the course of 20-some years, of doing that and learning some things and making some mistakes and figuring it out and, so on and so forth. But at the age of 50, we ended up transitioning from full-time pastoring, and we turned it over to another group, so forth, to kind of take the baton, and go with it from there, so forth. So everything that we built is still in place, it's still in motion, it's still doing what it does, so forth. But at 50 years old, I had to transition into a completely different industry, so forth, because I've been doing ministry and full-time pastor and everything connected to it since I was 28 years old, so forth. And at 50, now having to transition to something that I had no background at all, which was insurance industry, so forth. So it felt good at the age of 50 to be wanted, so forth. And we actually were recruited and, so forth. And I got a green light from the Lord to go ahead with it. So we ended up starting our own agency, so forth, in Findlay, Ohio, that is still, we're on a good clip, so forth. And we're actually getting ready to open up our second office January 1st that I'm super excited about, because my wife gets to run that one as well, okay? So forth. So there's what I want to share is, again, all glory to God, but the principles that cause success in ministry, that cause success in a school, that cause success in just general business, so forth, is the same principles that have caused us to have success even when we transition at the age of 50, where we're having tremendous success in the whole insurance industry, so forth. Give perspective for that, the way that it is rated within the State Farm family, there's 20 or 19,000 State Farm agents, within the country. And out of that particular group, they rated for the newer agents, so forth. And out of that group of agents have been agents for 5 years or less, so forth. So you're talking 15 or 10 to 12,000 individuals. We're rated number 39 in the country, so forth. So we've had success even in the 2.5 years that we've been in this. So what I want to be able to share with you is there's a reason why success can translate, so forth. That once you get certain things, certain principles, and you buy into certain principles, it will translate to success. All right, and that's what I want to share with you. Does that sound all right for everybody here? Okay. So first of all, there's a few things I want to be able to share. Number one is this, and I'm not trying to be preachy. I would love to, but I'm not trying to be. I would love to, but I ain't. I would love to, but I ain't trying to be preachy. But Acts 13 and verse number 36 talks about David, how he served his generation. He served his generation by the will of God. So the first thing we know, if anyone is familiar, I'm sure you are, with David, so forth, that when he went out, and which turned out to be the battle with Goliath, he didn't go out there to be in the battle with Goliath. He went out there because he's serving his daddy. His daddy told him to take this food, take it to your brothers, so on and so forth. He's just serving his daddy, so forth. In the process of all that, he happened to be at the right place at the right time. And what his generation demanded is for somebody to stand up against Goliath, so forth. So there's a principle that goes beyond church, it's a principle, it's a life principle, which is serve your generation. All right. What that means is when we started in ministry and so forth years ago, that one of the first things that we did was sit down with individual. I remember a particular meeting that we had with an individual that was more like a city planner, so forth. And we had a discussion with him. It was myself, Pastor Lofton was in this meeting. We sat down and we asked him, what does our city need? What does our city need? So forth. And he gave a list of about 3 different things that the city was missing, that the city really needed, so forth. And out of that little list, I could check one of those boxes and said, okay, we're going to go after this, because one of the things he said that they needed was quality daycare. Quality daycare. There was a lack of quality daycare in our community at that time, so forth. Now, this is the serving your generation piece. I never dreamed in my life I'm going to start me a daycare. Okay, so I don't know if I look like daycare, but I ain't daycare. Okay, so forth. That ain't anything that was on my bucket list. That wasn't anything that I used to stay up late dreaming about. I want a daycare one day. It wasn't nothing like that. So forth. But what our city needed was a quality daycare. So forth. Serving your generation is about recognizing that your life is not about just doing what you want to do and fulfilling all your little dreams and so on and so forth. That's not what this is about, okay? Primarily. You can have fun, you can do all the different little special things, but that can't be primary. The primary is you must present yourself that I am a servant to my generation. And whatever my generation needs, and if I have the gift set, if I have the tools, so forth, to be able to solve that problem, that's why I'm on this earth right now. We all know the Lord Jesus. He didn't come here to show off everything he could do. He could have built schools. He could have built hospitals. He could have rode on sand and shared the natural ways of being able to cure cancer. He had the brain. He had the brilliance. He knew it all. But that's not what he was down here to do. The generation did not demand for him to build a medical facility. It demanded him to be the savior. That's what we need him to do. Because you do what can't nobody else do, and so forth. Serving your generation, again, is recognizing what are the needs in your community? What are the needs in your area, so forth. And if you have the skill set to do something about that, then go in that particular direction. You could have the greatest mashed potatoes you ever known to mankind. But if you bring those mashed potatoes to a marathon event, so forth, where they just done completed a marathon, do you think they would rather mashed potatoes or some Gatorade? Okay, so forth. In other words, you can't say, but these are the best, but they don't want mashed potatoes. They want some Gatorade, because they're dealing with dehydration. They don't need that right now. They need some Gatorade, so forth. Serve your generation what they're missing, what they have need of, so forth. In the process of that, you will do well financially. You will do well, but making serving the goal as the primary thing instead of using people to fulfill your dream. So forth. It's all about recognizing that I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to serve people, so forth. If that's the mentality, there's a lot of areas that you can be able to get your name in the hat and be successful at the same time. So that's principle number 1 is having a mentality that says, I want to serve my generation. When you serve your generation, it'll keep you relevant. Business people know that unless you know how to adapt, you could be the favorite flavor today, but you can be, out of sorts with everybody next week if you don't know how to adapt, so forth, how to reinvent yourself. I've had to learn how to reinvent myself, so forth. You got to be able to adapt because things change. People's tastes change, so your tastes change, so forth. You got to be able to adapt. So forth. That's what happens when you're in the position of being a servant. That means I am willing to adapt. I am willing to shift what I need to shift and do what I need to do for the sake of helping people. And the byproduct of helping people, you get tremendously blessed yourself. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2 is always win your team and your customers. Always be in win mode. Always be in win mode. So forth. We used to, when we would have staff meetings, with our church, we would tell, our staff people is to make sure that you're always in win mode when you're dealing with not customers, but when we're dealing with our church folks. Always be in win mode. Don't think you've won them just because they're there, so forth. Always be in win mode. When anybody's in win mode, I don't care if you dating somebody, you in win mode, so forth. What's the point? You're gonna give your best effort. You're gonna make sure that you present yourself the right way because you are trying to win them. See, familiarity, causes a lot of things to start off good, but then it disintegrate because it's a toxic type culture, that begins to infest within that business culture, and it can mess it all up because everybody's familiar with everybody, so forth, and the respect level that has to always be there has left, so forth, and you always have to be in win mode, not just with the customer, but always be in win mode with your employees. If you have employees, always be in win mode. That don't mean that they get everything they want. It just will affect. It also means that sometimes you still got to correct them, but it will change how you correct them. You correct the way you would want somebody to correct you, so on and so forth. So always be in win mode. When you're like that, and it's a culture of respect, it'll also cause a culture of creativity to take place. If people don't think that they are being heard, if they don't think they're being heard, there are things that they have that could cause this business to go to a whole nother level. But if they feel like they're not being heard, they'll share it to somebody else, but they won't share it to someone who can actually do something about it. All right, so forth. So always be in win mode. Is this helpful for anybody? Okay. Number three. Hire people to do what you're not great at. Okay. Hire people. Bring people in. Again, if you got a little team or another person and so forth, hire people to do what you're not great at or things that you just don't like to do. That we all know, business owner wise, that once you start, you just got to get in where you fit in, and you got to do what you got to do. And there's some things that we all had to do that we weren't great at, but I had to do it until I had enough money to hire somebody, so forth. So I get that. All that's understood, so forth. But once you get to a certain point, at least start having a plan of bringing somebody in to be able to do things and bring things to the table that you don't naturally bring at a higher level. Entrepreneurs, by definition, think that they can about do anything, okay? Which is a tremendous, gift, but it also, if that gift is not controlled, it could cause you to go off the rails, so forth. So bring in people that balance you. Bring in people that are not like you. They don't think like you. So forth, because that'll help. Say, I'm a visionary, so forth. So I don't have no problem seeing how this could work, seeing how that could work. I don't have no problem with that. So forth. I need somebody around me to be like, don't fool with that. I need someone around me to say, there's just too much liability attached to going after that. To help balance me a little bit, because I'll be way, way out there if left to myself. So I can't hire people that are like me. I got enough vision for everybody. So I don't need more of that. I need someone, that like doing accounting. Okay. I need people that are good at that. I could do it, but it will wear me out. I need people that they can do that all day long. They can do it they get energy off of it. I lose energy off of it. They gain energy off of it. So forth. You need people that you empower to tell you, don't do that. Don't say it like that. Don't send that email out. So on and so forth. That don't taste good. You need people around you that can give you the real feedback that you need to make the adjustments as a business owner, that can be, success or failure. So always hire people to do what you're not great at or do the things that you don't really like to do, so forth. So sometimes, when you're a person that's positive and you want to do something, sometimes you can get annoyed by someone that's like, I don't think that's a good idea. But you need that person around you. You need to hear that kind of thing. If nothing else, it'll make you go back and take another look at that, before you just plow forward and it becomes a problem, okay? Number 4, delegate, and empower your people, Delegate. One of the things that, I've learned, over many, many years is you have to lead out front. Lead out front. Don't lead from the middle, and sure don't lead from the back. Lead out front. I know it's an expression that demands a little bit of explanation, so forth, but you need to get out front. In other words, if you spend so much time in the business, you're not working on the business, so forth. So you got to get out front. It's like being in a car. We drove, from Ohio, so forth. So it's like driving that. How many understand it's not a good idea to be texting and driving? All right, so forth. So in other words, for me, I pass my phone to my wife, and she's making notes for me so that I can stay in my lane and keep this car going where it needs to go, so forth. So it's the same type principle that if you're doing all the work of it, all you up in there grinding, you're doing all that, who's driving the car, so forth. So you don't want to make a small business owner mistake. That's the reason why a lot of them don't make it, so forth, because they spend so much time on the mashed potatoes. They don't spend enough time marketing to the audience that wants some mashed potatoes, so forth. So they got a great thing, but don't nobody know nothing about it, No one's heard of it, so forth. And the clientele that would love that, they're estranged from them, so forth. So you have to make sure, that you are building your own brand, that you're spending adequate, even if you got to get in there and grind. We've all been there. You got to grind, but make sure you time block. I'm grinding from such and such hour to such and such hour. After that, I'm getting out and I'm spending time and making some posts and doing different things that will keep me relevant, push my product out there, what we're doing, find ways of which I can introduce what I do to an audience I think might be inclined towards it, okay? So forth. So in order to do that, you got to delegate. You got to free yourself up, because your most prized commodity as a business owner is your time. It is not money, because we can make money. It's time. That's what you don't get back. You can go make you some more money. So forth. It's time. It's gone. So forth. So your most prized commodity is time, and you want to be able to delegate to free yourself up so that you can introduce yourself to a brand new market, expand yourself, so on and so forth. But if all your time is just spent on the product, so forth, you're not going to have the time that it requires to get out there and introduce yourself to the people that would want your stuff if they even knew you existed, all right? So make sure that you are delegating and empowering your people, so on and so forth. Lead out front. Number 5, develop a system for success that is sustainable. Develop a system for success, all right? So one of the things that has caused us to have consistent success from completely different industries, so forth, but the production and the success are all just like this, is because we always develop systems, as opposed to a mom and pop type mentality, There's a reason why a McDonald's can produce the same way consistently from one place to another place, so forth, because they're not just giving their opinion of how long the fries ought to be in. You understand what I'm talking about? They got a system, and it's in the deep fryer for X amount of minutes, and it's done like that consistently. It's reproducible, so on and so forth. So those are the same principles that I'm speaking of developing systems for success. So you're not getting lucky last month, but it can be a consistent type thing where it's just you're building something that just keeps going up, and up, and systems enables you to do that. So forth. So it's not just we had a really good month, but you don't know what caused that and how to sustain that. And systems can hold things and keep that as that's your new floor now, if you have a system for it. When we were, when we were full-time pastoring, we had to pastor when we had 40 people like we had 2,000 people. So we started setting systems up, even though we didn't actually need it. We knew we were going to grow. So we started putting systems in place and educating people around the systems that weren't used to it, so forth, and they got used to it, but it gave us a greater capacity to be able to handle growth, and that's what systems will do, because a lot of times small business owners don't make it because when growth happened, they couldn't handle it. They didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know how to process that. So forth, and it just got out of control. People got turned off because they don't like to wait, so on and so forth. They're going on down the street. Okay, so for systems enables your capacity to handle the stuff you say you want, which is success, to handle it on a greater level. Okay, so forth. So I don't care what it is. When we would counsel, so forth, it wouldn't be just is pastor in and they come on. No. We got counseling form. You got to fill out this counseling form. It enables people a chance to be able to put their thoughts together, and so forth, and not just be emotional, but put their thoughts together in a concise way, so on and so forth. And then it gave me an opportunity to be able to understand what's going on, so we don't have to spend 45 minutes bringing me up to speed. I can just jump right in, to what's going on, and this is how I can help, so forth. We systemize everything. Anything you do more than 2 times, you ought to develop a process, you ought to develop a system that is reproducible. If you got a team, teach them and hold them accountable to the system. Don't let them change it when you ain't in the office, So this is how we do it, so on and so forth. I don't care if it's how you talk to customers, how they answer the phone. I don't care how it is, so forth. It needs to be systemized, so forth. So it can breed excellence. It can bring, sustainability, so on and so forth. All right. 2 more. Is this good for everybody? All right. 2 more. Number 6 is everything, and this is huge. This is huge. Everything rises and falls on the level of leadership. You got to buy into that. Everything rises and falls to the level of leadership. All right? And you have to buy into that. The reason why I'm saying that, so forth, is a lot of times, and this actually goes in with my 7th and last point, so I'll talk about them together, is a lot of times people don't understand that leadership demands assumptions. It demands assumptions. You just have to make good ones. You have to make good ones, all right? Versus bad assumptions. What's a bad assumption? Well, we're not growing because of inflation, because of the, supply chain issues. That's a global thing, supply chain, and that's a bad assumption. No, you ain't growing, but it ain't because of that. So is that real? Is inflation real? Yeah, it's real. But Joe down the street, he growing. So forth. So somehow in the midst of inflation, his customers ain't hearing that. His business ain't hearing that. That's a bad assumption. In other words, you have to assume that everything rises and falls to the level of leadership, not national economy. It will rise and fall to leadership. Okay? When you buy into that, if you're not growing, now you're going to make the right assumption. What am I not doing? Okay, now it's going to put you in the right vein to discover something. Okay, so forth. Let me ask, people. Let me ask customers. Let me find out what are they saying. So forth. All right, because again, you got to make assumptions. You just don't want to make bad assumptions. So forth. I had an individual that came to me and was, that they had sent to me. State Farm sent them to me to basically hang out with me and learn some of my processes and so on and so forth. And, I'm transparent, and I shared it and, some things with them. And then, recently we were at an event together, and he came up just as bold as he wanted to be. And he was like, hey, that one process you told me, I tried that. It ain't worked for me. It ain't worked for me. It ain't worked for me. So forth. So, just bold, it ain't worked for me. Because he's making the wrong assumption. So I quickly asked him, I said, how did you train your team on that? Well, I didn't, he starts him-hawing, so on and so forth. What's the point? Because he made an arrogant, wrong assumption that it can't be what I'm doing. It can't be how I framed it. He's looking at it like it was a magic trick I was giving him, and not understanding that the only thing that makes things work is leadership. You can have the greatest chicken of all time. You put poor management in charge of that thing, ain't nobody gonna want that. Ain't nobody gonna, so because they're gonna irritate everybody. And people come and they didn't order right. They don't know how to order. They don't know when to order. You go to a place they're supposed to be ordering. It's chicken on the front of the store. Chicken, So forth. I'll have that 3-piece. We don't have no chicken today. You don't have no chicken today. What you talking about? So forth. Not knowing how to order, you understand what I'm talking about, so forth. So again, my point is that you have to be able to make the right kind of assumptions. All right. When something is not right, instead of saying, I can't hire the right kind of people. How about that's a bad assumption. How about let's look at how you are onboarding people? Are you setting them up for failure? Where they're not getting enough on the front end to set them up to be able to knock it out the park. And they're trying to figure it out, and they just got frustrated, and they said, oh, forget it. And then you call them a bad apple. They ain't a bad apple. It's a bad system of how you onboarding people and setting them up for success. If they're going to be representing you, you're going to have to invest on the front end of making sure that they're going to do things the way you want it done, and they not just know what to do, but the why behind the what as well. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? So again, this is a huge, huge thing that everything rises and falls to the level of leadership. If I got someone that is messing up or did something that wasn't what I was expecting, so forth, the right assumption is, did I train them right? Did I skip something? Did I rush something with them? I'm going to assume that first. It could be they just goofy. It could be that. But that's not the assumption I'm going to make up front. I'm going to assume it's me. Because everything rises and falls to the level of leadership. I got to be able to handle that and shoulder some of that, and at least on the front end, do my due diligence of being able to take responsibility, because that's my employee. So if something ain't right, so forth, I'm going to go back to myself and my process of how I dealt with that individual, because there might be something where it's like, oh, okay, I dropped the ball right there. I see, that ain't you, that's on me. I'm going to fix that. Now, the next time, we're going to have a different kind of conversation, so forth. But you got to make the right, because leadership demands assumptions. You just got to make the right kind of assumptions, okay? So forth. So again, because everything rises and falls to the level of leadership. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. So far, I'm just sharing some things out of my heart that I've learned over many years, some things that have caused some success in different industries. So it wasn't just, we were just tailor-made for one thing. I believe that if you're a leader, you can lead about anything, so forth. And the principles that cause success over here will cause success over there as well, all right? So that's what I got. I would love for questions. If you got some questions, anything I could do to drill down on something specifically or give some examples, Lewis can tell you I got many. I got way more unction than y'all got time. Trust me, okay? Way more, all right? So if there's anything, any questions that someone might have?
I got a question to kick the questions off. For you, what may have been the biggest challenge in terms of just some of the things that you've built? Of course, I've been around some of those things, but and I believe it takes a true entrepreneur spirit just to do those things. What was the biggest challenge for you in terms of doing some of the projects that you did of certain sizes, like build buildings? Of course, is there a principle that remains the same even though it's something small versus something big, or was there a shift that you may have had to make in different types of size projects?
I believe in progression, so forth, that you got to be able to win on this level, and then you can win on this level. And it's not that it's much different, but it's about a confidence factor, and learning, and getting your systems that will create bigger capacity, so forth. So when we were in our first building, so forth, and we were maxed out, we were doing like 3 services a day. I mean, not a day, but 3 services on a Sunday, so forth. We even though we were landlocked and maxed out, we learned a lot about systems, so forth. So that was the season that demanded us to learn systems that will cause our capacity to be able to, pass on a much larger level. So once we did that and we started biting off different other things, we started doing what we called wow jams. There's big summer type things that we would do, so forth, and we hand out, hundreds and hundreds of prizes and feed everybody. And Stephen and Linda Tavani, if y'all remember Peaches and Peaches of Herb, and so forth, she would come and and she had little draw, so forth, and we were doing things on a bigger level. That kind of introduced us, to a level, because it would bring in 1,500, 2,000 people, so forth. We'd have 500 folks get saved one time, but it introduced us to another level. that we had to have processes and systems that could sustain that right there, so forth. So it grew us up. It grew us up to the point when we got to the place and we got ready to build a 30,000 square foot facility, our first one, so forth. We had the courage that we could do it because of the team that we had developed, so forth. And we also understood enough that, and this might sound very, very practical, is ask people questions and so forth. We asked a ton of questions because when we built our first building, so forth, I didn't come from no construction background. I don't know nothing about construction. If something break in my house, if a hammer and a screwdriver can't do it, I'm out, so forth. So, I couldn't be ashamed of what I didn't know, so forth. So I would get around the people that's what they do. That's what they do, and I would ask 100 questions just so I could get to a certain level. So when I would go up in those meetings with these engineers and these high level professionals, I could get in those rooms and be able to ask some questions that would be on their level.
Good stuff. All right, we got a question here.
I guess I'm at the assumption point of my business. I'm an independent trucker, 35 years driving, 20 with FedEx, retired, bought my own equipment outright.
Awesome.
And the economy, for me, my truck as an independent, it's about $5 a mile.
Okay.
They're paying $1.80 a mile. I can't afford to run. So I shut my truck down in trailer. It's parked now for about the last 4 or 5 months because I was just running for fuel.
Yep.
How do I make a different change or assumption how to run because I can't move my truck at $1.98 a mile. If I go to, the difference was going from here to Detroit was a $900 payment, but they're paying $300 now.
Yep.
Fuel is $700.
Yep.
So I parked it, and now me and my wife is thinking about selling the equipment off, and taking and trying to find another venture.
Well, yeah, and again, you're looking at somebody who had to reinvent himself.
Yeah, that's what
You're looking at somebody.
That's where I'm at right now.
And I could have been, and I'm not saying this regarding you, but regarding me, I could have been stubborn and be like, no, I've done this forever. I'm gonna keep doing, and I'm gonna just, So I could have been stubborn, or recognize that the big picture of what do you want to do, big picture. You know what I'm saying? Big picture, what do you want? I want to take care of my family. I want to do some things to set them up, so on and so on. Okay, well, that opens up the playbook. That opens up your opportunities. There's a lot of things that you could do with your skill set, your experience, and so forth, but you might be closed to it until you kind of open it up by saying, okay, what do I really want to do? Get back to the basics. What do I want to do? Once you get to that, instead of it being this right here and being very narrow and limited in your options, it will open it wide up, so forth, where you can be like, okay, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. This is an open opportunity over here, so forth. So sometimes, instead of pushing, because again, you have to adapt, and recognizing without being stubborn, recognizing open doors, that my skill set fits that.
All right, we got time for another question before we move into our next transition time. You got any more questions?
I do have a question. As far as scaling a business, like what if there's an entrepreneur here who feels like, okay, I've started, I'm doing decent, but how do I scale my business? How do I get it to that next place?
Well, number one, it depends upon that industry, for what that demands to go to the next place. What I would do if I'm in that situation is I go and I'm a network with people that are where I want to be. I want to get around people that are smarter than me. I want to get around people that are more successful than me. I want to get around people that are not yes people to me, that don't think I'm awesome. I want to get around somebody, they don't know who I am, so forth, because I don't need that. That won't make me better. So if I want to go to the next level, there are people that level exists. What are they doing and have already in place that I might not currently have? And then you can be able to self-assess and be like, okay, I learned a bunch of stuff. When we were, we're close to, Chicago and Bill Winston, so forth was a great, we had him at the church, many times, so forth. But being around people like that, for me, was like I would learn stuff so forth by being around great people that are on another level, and I would learn something they didn't even know they was teaching me that, so forth. So to me, the biggest thing is getting around, that level exists. People are already living and operating there, so forth. Get around them. Sometimes people say things like this, I would get this, well, I can't get around them. I called and set an appointment. They won't meet with me. Or, I couldn't get no time with them. Do they write books? If they write a book, you can be with them every day. You can spend time with them every day because they done put their thoughts in a book and so forth, But that's where some people check out, be like, I can't do that. Well, that's why you might not grow to the next level then, because you got to be, there's a million ways of getting around that group, without eyeballing them. You can get around them and get around their thinking, so forth. So they got podcasts, they got a stream, they got books, they got anything that they put down on paper somewhere. Get a hold of that stuff, because there are things that are chucked up in there that will translate, to you. So yeah, that's an excellent question.
All right. Why don't you clap your hands for David Roberts? That was an amazing presentation. We appreciate him so much.